Hi everyone. Thank you to those of you who've just been waiting a minute or two. I just want to say a huge welcome to today's webinar on Rhino ear notching. What is it and why do we do it? Many of you will know me already, but for those of you who don't, my name is Amber and I form part of the fundraising and communications team here at Old Pechter Conservancy. And with me here today is Samuel. If you have any questions, do feel free to put these into the question section on your screen. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session, and any questions that we don't get to, we will be able to follow up via email afterwards. Before we get going, however, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for being monthly donors. Monthly donors have been and are crucial to our survival, and we really can't thank you enough. No matter what project you donate to, whether that's the Northern White Rhinos, our Rhino Scholarship Programme, or our Black Rhino Conservation Project, here in Old Pechter, we refer to you as Rhino Guardians, and we really cannot thank you enough. So thank you for your support, and we really hope you get to visit Old Pechter one day and see the impact of your gifts. But for now, I will hand you over to Samuel.
Hello, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Oh, Samuel, you're a little bit quiet.
Thank you everybody for joining us. Just checking. Clear?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining this webinar. Thank you also for continued support. Really appreciate you holding our hand through this journey. So my name is Samuel Mutisia. I work here at Old Pechter as the head of conservation. I have been working for the Conservancy now for the last 16 years, so I've been enjoying it. You know, and I started working when the population of rhinos here were only 45, and now we are talking about 200 rhinos currently being hosted here at Old Pechter. So the big growth. I feel blessed to be part of this, and I'm grateful that I have partners with me supporting me and supporting every other ranger and every other staff working for Old Pechter. So just to let you know, a small background is that the Kenya's population suffered a huge decline. In fact, 98% decline from about the years of 1960, when we had about 20,000 rhinos in Kenya, to about, in fact, less than 400 by the year 1990. So that's a huge decline, and that explains the reason why we pay so much attention towards managing and ensuring that these species recover from that kind of decline. It's the most intensively monitored species in Kenya. It is the most protected, and it is for a good reason. We currently host the largest population in Eastern Central Africa with 159 Eastern Black Rhino, which is native to Kenya. We also host 41 rhinos in the Conservancy, and we have the last two known to exist, Northern White Rhinos. Right. And you know, for today, we're going to be talking about just a small aspect of monitoring the rhino population, of managing the rhino population, and that is ear notching. You know, why do we do ear notching, and what is ear notching? And ear notching is simply introducing small notches around the ears of a rhino, whether it be black or white. And usually this is to be able to create unique IDs that visually can help us tell apart two rhinos. Because you know, two rhinos in the wild that are nearly the same age sometimes are not easy to tell apart. And therefore, by introducing ear notches, we actually provide unique identification markers for each individual rhino in the Conservancy. Why do it? Why catch rhinos and cut their ears. It may sound weird, but it's an essential tool in management of the population. You need to be able to collect accurate data, and there's no way you can collect accurate data that will be useful for management unless you are able to tell apart these rhinos, unless you are able to identify the rhinos at individual level. So by undertaking rhino notching, we actually help in ensuring our data collection is accurate, ensuring the data we collect is actually useful because it's truthful and it's useful for making management decisions. And it's also in line with the national rhino targets, or the Kenya Black Rhino Action Plan, which requires that 60% of the population be uniquely identifiable. And when you have your rhinos uniquely identifiable within different meta populations or within different sanctuaries, then you can make critical decisions that you know are backed up by science, are backed up by accurate data. And therefore, here on Vegeta, by having notches on the rhino, we are able to identify every rhino uniquely, which means at the end of the day, we can tell which rhino has been seen and which rhino has not been seen. And that helps us in ensuring that we stick within our thresholds, which we've set. That means we need to see every rhino every 4 days. That is important because higher frequency of rhino resighting means that if they are sick, you can treat them in good time. It means in case there was any infiltration and an animal was killed, you will know in good time and you're able to make follow-up and potentially apprehend those that have occasioned that. So it's critical and it's important. So how do we do it? Rhino notching is a very complex affair that brings together people of various disciplines, and that takes a pretty long time and resources to be able to achieve. But first and the most important aspect, or the most important thing that you have to do while undertaking rhino notching, is to ensure that the intent, and the number of rhinos that you're notching is communicated to the National Rhino Office program with Kenya Wildlife Service in good time for approval. It is very important, and it becomes critical that any event that is geared towards sedating a rhino for whatever reasons is approved at the headquarters. And so the decision to notch rhinos and the approval to notch them is sought way in advance through formal letters, and then there are meetings to explain why you need to do it and how you're doing it, where you're doing it, and what candidates are targeted. Now, this ensures that then the resources that are required are devoted towards the exercise. For example, the teams that come from Kenya Wildlife Service are then planned as such for a particular date or a particular period of time. Vegeta itself as well ensures that its team, that is very crucial, is also planned to ensure that the exercise is successful. There are so many resources that are required to undertake rhino notching. One, you need a spotter plane, which is a fixed plane that flies early in the morning to be able to locate these rhinos that need to be notching, support the ground crew to be able to direct them for confirmation that this is really the target candidates that we need to notch. And then when these candidates are located, then we have the veterinary team that prepares the drugs that are used for immobilization. Very lethal drugs from a human perspective, but drugs that can actually be reversed once introduced to an animal. So these drugs are prepared, and the vet gets onto the helicopter that is going to aid in darting, and the helicopter has to hover around just above the bushes, and the vet, once he's in a clear view of the animal, is able to release a particular drug using a dart gun. And of course, that is a bit scary for the animal, but it's an essential activity in as far as recovering that population. So once the animal is hit by the dart, it may actually run for 40 to 50 kilometers per hour for 7 to 10 minutes, which means there has to be a team, a ground team, that is able to follow that animal across bushes. It's a very rigorous exercise, quite tense, but very interesting if you'd really take part in it. And so the fixed wing, after the chopper does it, takes off, and the fixed wing comes in to direct ground teams who communicate using ground radio, ground to air radio, to be able to follow that animal until it is fully sedated, immobilized, and then that ground team comes together with the veterinary team to be able, one, to stabilize the animal, provide oxygen. There's a team that looks at whether the animal has any injuries, any parasites, and any treatment that is required. There's another team that is actually specialized only in ensuring the right ID, that first we get the candidate right, and that the right ID is inscribed on the ears of that particular candidate. At the same time,
Oh, Samuel, we can't hear you anymore. It's gone a bit quiet.
Sorry.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so once the animal goes down, there is all these teams that are working to ensure that the job is done within the quickest time possible. And basically that is to ensure that the animal has the right notch, that the animal is treated if need be, various samples to ensure genetic profiling and others are collected, body measurements are taken. There's also a team that ensures security for the entire operation, because this operation is happening in the wild. It might land in an area where there are lions, elephants, and other things. So there has to be a team that is taking care of that. And then there's somebody coordinating to ensure that it takes the shortest time possible, because anytime a rhino is down, it's a rhino that is at risk. So it takes about just a couple of minutes, not more than 10, to do all that and reverse the drug, and the animal gets up. What is important to note is that we only immobilize rhinos during the cool hours of the day. So it happens between 7 and 11 latest, and then the teams break and they resume again at about 4 p.m. in the afternoon when it's a bit cool. And that exercise must be cut off at 6 p.m. in the evening. Beyond that, it is illegal. You are not supposed to be immobilizing animals. So it's a very expensive exercise based on what I've said. It costs about $1,200 to do one animal. And in fact, that price is already, when you're doing 20 animals, there's economies of scale. So we try to do many animals, and that price is based on economies of scale. If you are doing only one animal at a given time, it may cost you $2,000 plus. And so at the end of the day, then there is the debriefing. We look at how many animals have we done. We provide feedback to management, both at the headquarters and locally. And then we also look at what we did well, what we might not have done as expected. We review our methodologies, and then we plan for the next day. It's always important. So a day begins with planning. The debrief happens at the end of the day. So, yeah. And all that hullabaloo or whatever intensity of exercise that I described, scouring the bushes, ensuring these rhinos don't fall into ditches, following them quickly so they don't get stuck into trees, they don't fall into rivers, is basically to achieve what you're seeing before you. A rhino that has the sort of marks that Juba, this is Juba, and it's a male I was born in 2001. And is in the northern sector. And this particular male has two notches. The one on the right side of the ear, as the rhino faces you, is actually a 1. And then on the other ear, there is a notch that is mid-section. That is a 30. So the rhino is number 31. The 4,000, because we have 4,031, 4,000 sort of figure denotes the Opegeta population. So Lewa, for example, is 2,000, or any other sanctuary would have allocated, a range of IDs, so that rhinos that are within a certain sanctuary, when data arrives at the headquarters, that data remains unique to that particular individual. So it gets quite tricky as you move down the other combination of numbers. For example, if you wanted to describe a 2, then you would not have a single notch at the tip of the right ear, which is the left ear of the animal, I want to imagine. And so what looks like a W is actually a double notch of 1 to make a 2. And if you look at this rhino on the other ear, it has a notch at the top and a notch at the bottom. So based on what I've said, a notch on top of the right ear is a 1. Midsection of the right ear is a 3. And the lower part is a 5. So if you had a rhino that has all the sections notched, that is 1, 2, 1, and a midsection 3, and a bottom one 5, then that would be number 9. I hope you've forgotten. And then on the right, you have either a 10 on top or a 30 in the midsection or a 50 at the bottom. So you could easily also have a 90. But the reason I chose to have duta for this example is so that you see when you need to have a 2 or a 20, then you would have to do a double sort of notch at the tip of the ear. But what this really serves to tell you is that, interesting enough, is if you have a combination of notches, you can actually achieve very many unique IDs. You can even go beyond 100, because those of us who are keen on this already know that you can. Then how would you go beyond? When you go beyond 100, then you introduce a circle in one of the ears, which allows you now to repeat the pattern again for populations that are beyond 100. So, and basically all this is to be able to tell these animals apart. It's the only way currently to do that effectively. Otherwise, then you would be required to use RFIDs, other tags and other forms of technology. Unfortunately, that fails after every 2 years at the moment. So a notch is a lifetime ID for the animal. I'm not sure they can hear me.
Yeah, it's just a little bit slow to update to the next slide.
All right. Yeah. As she works on that, so it's in principle, it's really critical. Sometimes you wonder whether it's necessary to have all these paints, but it is. If we are to recover the population of rhinos in the wild, we must know and collect data at individual levels so that management is accurate, is on point, and no errors or confusion can arise. And also because these animals are prone to poaching. We would not want to argue on what rhino was poached or which one was not, or how one rhino went missing in between. Usually accurate data is important in ensuring that these species are managed properly. And so to keep track of the population, we do that notching. And then again, also for rhinos that are uniquely identifiable, we do introduce audit activities where we call in other external verifiers. Come and look at the data we have, to come and look at the number of
Sorry, your
rhinos that we
sound gone a little bit unclear again. Sorry.
I apologize. Perhaps internet failure or intermittency. But what I was saying is that we usually are very keen to invite other people from similar organizations that are also dealing with rhino experts to come and verify, to help us see whether there's something we are missing out. And usually when you have notched animals, these are uniquely identifiable to anybody, both rangers within the conservancy or rangers from outside, or any other person for that matter. And it is advisable that every population in the country is audited every once in a while to ensure that the numbers we are talking about at national level are exactly the numbers that exist in the field. It's critical that that is verifiable. It's also important to be able to track things like treatment. Right? How do you ensure that rangers can accurately follow animals of interest, either animals that have been treated animals that are being monitored, either simply because we know they are likely to have a calf and we want to know in good time when they calf down, animals that that might require special attention. Occasionally, we might get a request for an animal that needs to be moved. How would we accurately tell which animal we are talking about? So notch pattern is very important. And if every population in Kenya is monitored and identifiable, then it means at national level we have a database that is able to help in these decisions. Opegeta, for example, maintains what we call a master ID file. So each particular rhino has what we would call a biodata. So we understand where it was born or where it came from, what it looks like, how its front and hind horn looks like, how many calves it's given birth. You have some information on that rhino at a flip of a page or click of a button. And so with uniqueness in terms of telling them apart, then the authenticity of such database is verified. And this is the reason we go through all that pain to be able to ensure that the data we have is accurate for decision making. It's critical.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Samuel. I think it's probably safe to say that everyone on this call would love to go out and watch an ear notching and just see how it all works. I know when I went out just with some of the rangers, it's just incredible. They've got their binoculars there and they can just ID a rhino from such a big distance and then record that data so we can be used for other purposes. So really, really interesting. Anyone on the call, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box or in the question area. We do have a few coming through. So Samuel, one of the questions come through is, does it hurt the rhino once they're sedated and then notched?
For rhinos that are notched, have to be of a particular age. We do not notch any rhino that is less than 2.5 years old. And that is for two reasons. One, once we mobilize an animal, you separate her or him with the mother, albeit temporarily. But that separation means that the animal, once reversed or once it is let go, will not be easily killed by predators. Also, it's an animal that is fairly grown. It's still a calf, but fairly grown to be able, to withstand, a bit of pain that it will go through, and two, it can survive upon revival, even if it is separated with the mother. And so, yeah, all those considerations in determining what candidate is notchable are factored. And the pain is not so much, because obviously at the point of cutting the notches, we also ensure that we apply pressure on the veins to ensure there's no bleeding or excessive bleeding. We also do apply topical antibiotics to ensure that there's no infections that may arise. So, yeah, it's painful a little bit, but it's also a rite of passage as we view it.
No, definitely. It's really, really important. We have another question coming through about, you mentioned earlier that you can't do it when it's quite hot outside, and you obviously have to do it during daylight. So in a good day, how many rhinos would you be able to notch?
For the security, if I got you right, for the safety of the animal, one, we don't like being too ambitious so that you notch too many animals than you are able to follow closely the next day for monitoring, from a monitoring perspective. But then also, secondly, we look at notching within acceptable limits, so that only about 2 to 3 would be notched in the morning hours, and maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So you could notch, if you're lucky, by spotting them quite well, or the frequency is high, then you can notch up to 5 animals. But because they are very skittish, they will always be hidden. They are, and I'm talking about majority of these rhinos, black rhinos. It's usually a huge task spot them in the first place, to spot the candidate that you're looking for. So you can imagine if you're looking for a particular animal among a population of 160 or 159, it will take you a while. And usually they are tucked in the bushes. So because of the time taken to look for animals, it ends up being that you notch about 2 or 3 in the morning for the first 1 or 2 days, and then that decreases to about 2 to 3 every day. So to notch 20, it will take you at least a week plus.
Wow, so it's a really huge task then, to notch a few rhinos. One of the other questions coming through is, when are we next doing rhino notching on Arpeggiata?
Sorry, I'm not sure I got your question right.
No, that's fine. Someone's asked, when is the next time that we will do rhino notching here on Arpeggiata?
If I got you right, the next notching exercise is targeted for the month of June, July, if all goes well. And we are looking at notching at least 25. If we do a little bit more than that, we would be really happy. Grateful.
Brilliant. Well, we'll definitely keep everyone involved. So everyone on the call today, when we get more details of the dates and the exercise, we'll definitely keep you updated. I think for now that concludes the webinar. Thank you so much, Samuel, for your time today. Thank you everyone for joining. It's been great to have you here today. There will be a short survey when you exit the webinar, so feel free to give us your feedback. We'd love to know what you thought today and what you'd like to hear more about. But most of all, just want to say another thank you for being a monthly donor. We really appreciate your support. You really keep the Conservancy running and allow us to continue to protect these rhinos. So thank you so much.